Good afternoon. I think we'll get going. Thank you all for making the time to come join us today. I'm Christy Bell. I'm the director of the Center for Economic Development for the University of Alaska System. And this is our Entrepreneurial Edge, or Global Entrepreneurship panel that we've put together this week. I want to recognize and thank Dr. Prasad, our dean, for allowing us to host this event over here at the College of Business, and thank you all for joining us. So it's my honor to introduce our panel of entrepreneurs for today that are going to share some of their experience with us. First, we have Chelsey Homan. She's the current VP for Client Relations for Simply Social. If you're not familiar with that business, you should check it out. Another group of young entrepreneurs here in Alaska have kicked that off, international business. And she's the former owner of Doggy Decadents. We have Brian Richardson. And normally we have a panel of all males, so I love this, that we have a little bit. Sorry, you're feeling a little excluded up there, Brian. Native Alaskan, he owns Immediate Care. It's a corporation with over 400 employees providing elder care throughout Alaska. Look forward to hearing about that. We have Meg Allen, who owns 2 small businesses. Meg's on the end there. She owns a Salon and Glaze nail bar on the south side of Anchorage. She's had this for around 4.5 years, and a busy mom. We'll hear all about her businesses. And then Candice McDonald, who's joined us previously. We'd love to hear Candice's stories, though. A former graduate alumnus here of the College of Business and Public Policy, and owns Salmon Berry Tours. She's had that business going since 2005. So I'm going to get out of here and let you all share your stories. I don't know what order.
What are these things?
Oh, you have these?
Recording thing.
So they're telling me to get rid of this.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I'm Meg Allen. Like Candice said, I own 2 businesses. I have a hair salon that's been open. It'll be 5 years in April. And Glaze is a all-natural nail bar, and that has been open just about 2 years now. I am a hairstylist by training. That's kind of where I started in my journey. And I'm actually a lot better at getting people to talk to me rather than me talking about myself. So I'm going to do the best that I can and try to make sense. I am excited to be here. I made some notes just so that I wouldn't ramble, because I'm very good at going off on tangents as well. I am happy to be here and happy to be a part of getting to know the university a little bit, because I kind of started out as I just dove into business without knowing a whole lot about it. I just have a passion for what I do, and wanted to make a business of it. So I sort of started at the other end of it and am working backwards. I did an interview on Sunday for a potential manager at my salon, and it was a really interesting interview, especially kind of knowing that I was going to be here talking about my business journey, because he's trying to get out of the corporate world and be in more of a small business, more of an intimate position, and so he was telling me all the things that he hated about the corporate world, and it was an interesting conversation that happened, because I was kind of reflecting on small business and all the things that were challenging about small business, and then to have him come with his views and all the things that he wanted to get away from corporate-wise, it was good. It was a good reflection for me to know that I'm where I want to be, and I'm doing what I want to be doing, which is, I think, it's a good thing. So I started, I am an implant from to Anchorage. I'm not from here. I moved here about 6 years ago, and actually on my drive to Anchorage, that's when I wrote my business plan to open the salon. So it was I had been in the hair industry and doing hair for about 8 years, and I had seen all the good in salons and the bad in salons just in working in different salons, and was ready, I thought, to open my own business. So I started writing my business plan on my drive here, and when I got here, I actually started looking for a space to lease before I even looked for a place to live, which was pretty an interesting way to go about it, and looking back. And so I just completely fell in love with Anchorage immediately, and just realized the opportunities here were really amazing for small business and for a salon. So I'm just going to kind of go through a recap of how I got to where I am now in business. So I started looking for a place, a space, and just through looking at, basically starting looking at for lease signs, kind of exploring different areas in Anchorage, trying to narrow down where I wanted to be, and having a few places fall through. I got to where I am. I'm on the south side over by, it's across the street from Burlington Coat Factory on West Diamond. And I actually ended up taking over an existing salon. There was a salon, it was actually on Craigslist, that I found this salon that was for sale. And I had kind of been through all of the beginning stages with build-outs and startups, and decided that it would probably be a good idea to start with a space that at least had a salon already there. So I had really high hopes. I went and checked out the salon, met the current business owner, who she had closed it down and it was just kind of sitting, not working, and she wanted $45,000 for it. And I thought, this is a little bit ridiculous, because I'm walking into this space looking at, there was no clients, there were no employees, all of the equipment was just nothing that I wanted to use. I mean, even the back wall color, it was so bad. I look at some of my before pictures and think, I can't believe that I even went for that. So I didn't go for that. I didn't buy her business, but I really liked the space. I loved the location, and I loved the actual space. So I, through being kind of a busybody, which I admit I'm a busybody. It served me well most of the time. I ended up going through the leasing agent and the landlord and finding out that the space she was actually hadn't paid her lease or her monthly rent for quite some time. So I went in and offered to take over the lease, which actually ended up being a good thing for her, because she got out of her lease and got to take all of her stuff that I didn't want with her. So left the raw space for me, which was a great place to start. I took over the lease and basically ripped everything out of there, leaving the plumbing and raw studs to do my own thing with. The build out, thinking back to it, I still sort of shudder when I think about that build out, because it was a big process. I did a lot of the work myself, and it was about 8 weeks that I just really went in there. I was working, had a couple of friends who were contractors and helped me get the space all built out, but it was a long 8 weeks. Lots of lessons were learned in those 8 weeks. So it was a good experience, though, overall, and I got to build my space and create my environment exactly how I wanted it to be, which was awesome. I opened with just me. I had a 1,400 square foot space, and I was the only employee for myself. Thinking back to that, I feel like I don't believe that I did that either. It was pretty crazy. Moving to a new city and within 6 months opening a salon and working with myself and just hoping that things would grow. They have grown slowly over time. I now have Including my second business, I have 32 employees, which is awesome. And I have been able to continue doing what I love, which is hair, and have been able to create the environment that I'm in, that I want to be in. I really believe that all of us work too much of our lives to not enjoy the environment that we're in, and that's probably, I would say, my number one reason for starting a business is I really wanted to kind of be in control and be in charge of the environment that I'm in. So it's been a good, very big learning process to kind of dive in and then organize everything else as I've gone, and it's been nice. It's definitely, I would say that the biggest thing for me is that I have a passion for what I do. I definitely don't have all of the business knowledge that I definitely didn't start with all of the business knowledge that I needed to have to start a small business, but I just went for it, and I think the only thing that saved me is that I have a lot of passion for my industry, and I really can truly say that I love what I do, which I feel very lucky to be able to go to work every day and not feel like I'm working. I feel more like I'm playing and having fun. So I would say my biggest challenges have been finding the right people, the right staff. Hiring is huge, a big challenge for me. I do feel like I have an awesome team right now that works really well together, and I have a very positive staff, which is nice. Another challenge that I have is finding the balance between what I love and what I need to do. I love to be behind the chair and I love to be doing hair, but there's so many things that need to happen. It's been hard finding that balance. And I think another big challenge is timing of expansion, timing of growing. That was kind of a big jump to open a second business when I did, and I don't know if it was necessarily the right time, but it's I'm getting through it. I would say my biggest rewards for owning my own business, definitely being in that environment that I've created for myself, and being the boss, being my own, being what I want to be, and being able to create that environment. It's one of the things that you think when you start a small business is that you'll be able to have your own schedule and be your own boss as far as when you need to work. And that was one of my biggest reasons for starting a business, and I found out that that is not actually true, because I work all the time, which is good that I love what I do, because I work a lot. So having the schedule that you want doesn't always happen. And then just another, I really, really enjoy meeting people and networking with people, and really I've formed a lot of really good relationships through being a business owner. So I'd say that's another really big reward. So that's me in a nutshell.
I'm Brian Richardson. I own Immediate Care in Alaska, but I also have done quite a few startups and turnarounds. And Meg, I'll help you expand to the point you can control your time if you help me with my Facebook. Okay. I cannot get the social media down. That's right. So, my story is a little bit roundabout. I did not get born into a business, wasn't born with a business license, didn't have anybody around me growing up that owned businesses or were venture capitalists or were anywhere in the finance realm. So for me, it was very much a find my own way kind of dynamic and a path. Born in Alaska by hippie parents, so I got to experience all of Alaska, everywhere. Fairbanks, Juneau. I lived in Whittier for 9 months. That took about 2 years of counseling as an adult to get rid of that. And when I was, I think, 19, I started working for an office equipment firm in Bellingham, Washington, and started seeing business owners and managers come through, and noticed they just had a different presence about them, and noticed that they had a lifestyle that I wanted. I didn't want to be working for somebody for 20 years. I have way too much energy, and I hate being bored. And so I couldn't imagine doing something for 20 years. That just was not what my interest was. So I noticed business owners tended to be the ones that were traveling. They were the ones usually with the better stories at Thanksgiving because they've done things and they've gone someplace. The idea of waiting 20 years and then starting to travel, why wait 20 years? It just, with my background living in Alaska and adventure, I just couldn't imagine waiting 40 years to start doing something, or 20 years for retirement. So that was in my mind about being a business owner. It really planted the seeds about having control of my time and more control of my finances than just having a solid paycheck that's never going to increase from year to year more than an X percentage. So I wanted to be able to increase my income without a limit, really. And so that kind of sat in the back of my mind. And then I started working. I got into the Navy, but before the Navy, I had to wait for about a year to get in. And during that time, and Eric, I don't think I told you this, but I worked for a friend that owned a Surf Pro franchise, and we had the contract to do all the janitorial for the Cherry Point refinery in North Whatcom County, just south of the Canadian border. Well, all that being said sounds exciting, but the reality was I cleaned 26 bathrooms a day. So I was schlepping from toilet to toilet for 8.5 hours a day. But what I got to do, though, in that was I got to meet everybody. I got to meet the CEO. I got to meet the finance group. I got to meet the operations group, health and safety group. I got to meet the guys out on the docks. And I really started seeing a difference of the mentality. I really saw frontline workers that either were complaining about their job site or they were looking forward to the next thing. I saw white-collar workers that had a different mentality than the ones that were on the job. Really started noticing the difference of mentalities. And so worked hard at that job and actually did real well there. And got in the Navy and discovered the medical field. Had no idea that I was going to like it, but I loved it. Absolutely loved medicine. So when I got out of the Navy, I got into cardiology. Absolutely loved medicine, excelled in cardiology as an allied health professional, and started just learning how to do pacemakers and how to program pacemakers on our patients. And being the curious type, I always want to learn something new. Discovered that I have an engineering mindset. So I was combining engineering and electronics engineering, doing the pacemakers along with my medical experience. And I got to the point that the rep for the Fortune 500 company says, look, you know what you're doing. I apologize. I thought that was off. They said, you know what you're doing. Why don't you just come work for us? And so I said, hey, why not? And so better money, better pay, better travel, better experiences. And so made that move and then worked for that company for 7 years. And the one thing I can say from that really prepared me for being an owner was I was always willing to do something that somebody else wasn't willing to do. For one example, I was sitting in Port Angeles one afternoon on the Olympic Peninsula, and I'm doing a little pacemaker check in the little hospital there. Not a very exciting place, very redneck. And I get a call about going down to Oakland the next morning to be there for an 8 a.m. case. Well, that meant not going home to my wife that night. It meant traveling straight to SeaTac, getting on an airplane without a bag, and it meant being in Oakland for at least a day, maybe 2 days. But I instantly went and jumped on that chance. And it developed a mindset of I have about 16 hours to be halfway down the coast and make sure that I'm in a place I've never been by 8 a.m. And the dynamics that it took to be able to make sure all those arrangements happened, because it was completely up to me to make that happen. My bosses didn't question my expenditures and made it happen. And it really developed that mindset, like Meg has described, of knowing down the road where I wanted to be and just doing whatever it took to get there. And that kind of persistence to chase down that. You saw ugly walls and you knew you wanted to change things out. And it really developed that mindset for me of how to pursue all of the details that it took, no matter what, to get where I needed to be. And so they offered me a rep position up here in Alaska. And I said, well, of course. If I can afford to stay warm, I'm definitely going back to Alaska. So came back up here and worked in cardiac electrophysiology, started doing cardiac mapping in the cath lab. But I was really itching to be an owner. The problem when you're an entrepreneur and you're stubborn and you have great ideas is bosses don't tend to like that. So I was constantly in tension with my bosses about, hey, why don't we do it this way? Why can't we do it better this way? And hey, I can save us money, or we can do more revenues if we do it X, Y, or Z. And They're VPs, and usually vice presidents in a Fortune 500 company are bought into the system. So obviously I wasn't a popular guy. So I started looking elsewhere for things to do, and met up with a guy named Hans, and I saw in the paper a little article about this guy Hans in Palmer, who was awarded a contract to do research for the Navy. And I thought, what in the world is a place in Palmer doing naval research? I've got to talk to this guy. So I looked him up and said, hey, you're somebody I want to meet, you're somebody I want to know. And so I went out and met him, and we hit it off. He's got a heck of a little manufacturing facility out in Palmer. And if you get a chance to go out to Triveris to check it out, what they're doing out there, you'll be really impressed with the kind of manufacturing and design that comes out of Alaska. So for 2 years, he and I were pitching ideas back and forth. And I had done a couple startups. I literally, having grown up in San Diego and Seattle for 10 years during the dot-com days, I realized Alaskans, we've got all sorts of duct tape ideas to fix whatever problem, right? We're always solving our own problems. And I went down there and saw how much money was being made out of creative solutions. And so I said, there's got to be a way to do this. And so I went and I bought a book at Barnes & Noble called How to Write a Business Plan. So I didn't know what I was doing. I just started at page 1 and started doing it. And I figured if I just keep running ideas through the system, at some point I'm going to get a winner. And so I ran about 5 different ideas through that book. Finally got one that actually popped out to a full business plan, and realized that the customer to go to start the business was Fred Meyers. But the expenditure, the time, and things like that, it just wasn't going to be worthwhile. So I had to shelve that one. But I was excited because I had gotten to that point. I was pretty excited about it. So when Hans and I got together a couple years ago, I knew how to write a business plan. I knew the concepts. And so he and I were like, hey, we've got to find an idea. We want to work together. So we just kept taking ideas, and we'd hit them back and forth off each other and run them through the analysis process. And we just didn't have anything that quite settled out. And one day he called me up and says, hey, Brian, I says, for my naval research project, I'm getting a lot of commercial interest, but I don't have anybody to run it. He goes, I've got some investors and folks coming out in about 2 hours out here. Why don't you come out and be part of the conversation? So I went out and sat down, and he goes, by the way, in a half hour when they show up, you're going to be the interim CEO. Okay. So in a half hour, they didn't know any better. They didn't know who I was. And so I introduced myself as the interim CEO. But because Hans and I knew what he was doing, I knew his technologies. We stuck to what we knew, acknowledged what we didn't know, asked for help on the things that we couldn't figure out. And about an hour and a half after that meeting, we had a handshake to be able to do some business with the investors and some folks. And so that wound up being the first funded startup. And the funny thing is when it got done, Hans says, all right, you go get money, you've got a job. So I wrote the business plan, went and got funding for it through an SBA loan, and got the money to pay my salary and to do the things we needed to do. We already had a customer lined up, and took that technology and vetted it out across 18 different industries. Alaska is an absolute amazing place. I was able to vet out 18 different industries without leaving the state. It was amazing. So that was just one. And so then for 2 more positions, just kind of a for-hire executive, as a CEO or as a COO. I love managing people. I love pulling together good people, creating a work environment that you like waking up to, and working for people or coming to work with people that you want to come to work with. It's really nice to be able to have that ability to set those people in place. And for those that are not productive for the workplace, it's nice to be able to be the one that can fire them and invite them to work elsewhere. And so the next step, so I did 3, I did 1 startup, 2 turnarounds, and then the 4th position was a hire CEO position for a company in crisis. And the day I got hired was the day that the state was going to decertify the company. So the owner and the legal team dealt with the state on the legal issues. I dealt with the state on operational issues, and by 4:30 that day, we had saved the company. We kept it from being decertified. So we tried to sell the company. I couldn't find a buyer at the price he wanted, so I wound up buying it out from him. And I tell you, when you go to buy a company that's existing and you've got lots of employees and a lot of dollar amounts and the feds and the state looking at you if you screw up, it can be a little intimidating. But I signed the papers on December 31st. When I woke up the next morning, it was the best day of my life because I was not worried anymore. I knew exactly what the boss's expectations were. And at that point, I'd gotten confident enough to know that I make reasonable decisions. Nobody's been killed under my decisions. There's been no big financial loss under my decisions. Everything else has been manageable. So Lord willing, I'll continue to be an owner and not go back to being an employee. But so in the future, what I'm doing now is a couple different startup ideas. I've got a couple ideas in the hopper, working in taking technology and leveraging it for the elderly. And so we're getting some of the business plans drawn up, some mock-ups prepped. We're going to go for investor funding within the next 30, 60 days and start another business. So I have a lot of admiration for Meg for running 2 businesses. That requires a lot of attention to detail. It's a lot of work. So I maybe ask him for some advice on that. So anyway, that's my meandering story, and I hope wherever you're sitting at that just because you don't own a business now doesn't mean that you won't in the future. So thanks for listening.
My name's Candice, and I own a tour company that I started 7.5 years ago. There have been a lot of lessons, but I love doing university talks because I like to say how important my education was, not just because there's important people in the room that I want to hear me say that. But I've learned that even more acutely recently in helping my niece purchase a coffee stand. She does not have a business degree and is 21 years old and had the means to do it suddenly, but doesn't want to do market research, doesn't understand market research, doesn't know what financial statements are, how to look at them, doesn't want to track inventory, has no way to know whether the baristas are stealing from her, even though since she took over the stand, it's making $100 less per day than the previous owner told her it was making. And the only part I've been able to strongly influence was the negotiation of the purchase. Thank you, negotiations class. Maybe my least favorite class at the school, only because I'm not good at it, because I like to just give people what they want. But I knew that the business could do well if she paid the right price for it. But since then, her lack of understanding of the general workings of business is really holding her back. So she'll be here in 5 years to talk about her lessons. Some of the same lessons that I learned myself. You know if you're an entrepreneur based on how many business ideas are in your brain at any given moment. So entrepreneurial spirit is really important, but so is the knowledge that goes with it. So there's tons of people like myself and like Meg that are like, hey, I'm going to start a business. So we do it, and I did this exact same process. I just did it, and then I learned all the lessons after. And probably not all of them yet. So having that beginning knowledge of the education probably saved my rear. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it. But then there's all these other lessons that you have to learn. So using those financial statements, doing your own bookkeeping really helps you learn that stuff. So that's, gosh, I couldn't even begin to say what the hardest lessons were, but doing research would be, I would advise everyone to do the research before you start a business and not after you start it. So just because you really want to do something doesn't mean that it's a good idea. Even if you believe with all your heart that's a good idea, and that might mean that you are an entrepreneur at heart, but it may not actually be a good idea, or it may not actually be a profitable idea. So market research is so important. I also hated market research. I hated it. I hated having to do it in school for classes, but it couldn't be more important before you jump into something that costs you your paychecks from your other job, not knowing if it's going to work or not. So research is super, super important. And back to the coffee stand, if she moved it, she could make up for breaking the lease that she's in 15 days, but she doesn't want to move it because she's in a lease. So like I've sat down and said, listen to me. If you move the stand from this horrible location, in 15 days you will have made that money back. So just pay those people out of their lease, move the freaking stand. So, like, and you know why? Because I did the research for her, because she didn't want to do it. So I went to where I thought would be a good place and counted the cars that went by and compared it to this place that it's at right now. And yeah, so market research, super, super important. Yeah, there's so many more things. I guess waiting for questions would be better. So that's it.
All right, well, I'm Chelsey Homan. Currently, I just started a month ago the position that I'm currently in at Simply Social, which is VP of Client Communications, which is basically involves a lot of account management, and then I also do internal marketing and PR for this web-based computer programming company. But prior to that, I had a business called Doggy Decadents, and I started that business when I was 18. My parents have always been entrepreneurial. My dad is has a construction company, Home Incorporated, building and remodeling homes, and then my mom is a seamstress. She has her own studio, LH Designs. So I grew up in a household where I was surrounded by entrepreneurs, and it was always something that I had an interest in. And many young people don't see entrepreneurship as an avenue. They always they tend to think that when they grow up, they are going to get a job and go work for someone. I always had it in the back of my mind that I was going to work for myself, at least at some point. My senior year of high school, I applied for and received a scholarship to attend an entrepreneurship camp, and that was held at Cornell University. It was called Camp Startup. And it was just a week-long camp, and it was just the basics of how to start a business, how to put together a business plan. And I came back from that and decided, well, I just received this education and this knowledge, why don't I just put it to use? And at the time, I was working at the pet zoo and just trying to drum up some business ideas. I ended up, at the time, I just acquired a new puppy, and I was baking dog treats for him, and it just came to mind that this is a business that I could start with very, very little capital, since I didn't have a whole lot to invest in my company, and at the time I just didn't think about I didn't think about the bigger picture of, first, even though I just attended this camp, about building a business plan and going out and pitching it to investors. It wasn't something that I thought I could do at that time. So I thought of a business that I could start with very little capital, and that was baking dog treats out of my parents' kitchen. And it wasn't something that I expected to last more than the summer. I just thought it would be a fun summer project before beginning college here at UAA at the business school. However, while starting that business and going around and soliciting my products, I just started to receive a lot of support and just various mentors throughout the community who said, hey, this is great, we love what you're doing, we want to see you continue to build this. And just over time, I just kept building on the business, improving my product, continuing to conduct product research, because when I first started the business, my product didn't have a very long shelf life, and there's all these obstacles I had to overcome, improving my packaging, improving my sales pitch, and figuring out, well, where can I push this product at more than just doing the farmer's market. And eventually I was I got my product into the pet zoo and into many local gift shops and at the airport, and even Walgreens 5 years later. And it was just a building process, a learning process, and something that I really enjoyed, especially while attending school, because I was able to apply what I was learning in my business classes to my business, and vice versa. I took many lessons learned from my business and was able to apply that to what I was learning in class, and actually I think I received more from my education having building the business at the same time, because it was more applicable to what I was currently doing. However, building this business, I learned that it wasn't something that I wanted to stay in forever. It was a fun business to start. My passion's always really been into networking, marketing, PR, and really communications. And after graduating, I finally decided I'd put one more year into the business, see where it went. It's very difficult to, well, the dog treat business in general is a difficult business, especially having a manufacturing company here in Alaska. That it's just difficult when it comes to being economically feasible, and I did put together a business plan to eventually take the business out of Alaska and expand operations to other states, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I wanted somebody else to do it. And so I finally decided that it was time to sell the business and pursue other opportunities, and ended up actually selling it to a student, another student that I had entrepreneurship class with Al Herman, and he ended up purchasing the business from me and has actually made many changes. Came in and was able to improve in areas that I would have never thought to improve in, and is currently continuing to run the business and do a very good job at it. And I'm very proud to have built something and see somebody else continue forward with it. So that was very self-fulfilling. So after selling Doggy Decadents, still trying to figure out where I really wanted to go, and worked with a friend at a small marketing and advertising agency, and again acquired a lot of increased my knowledge in marketing and advertising, and really focusing on social media marketing. And that's something that an area that I really enjoyed learning about, because it's constantly changing, it's something new. And then in addition to that, I enjoy working with people. I enjoy the business environment. When I was at Doggy Decadents, so much of my time was spent doing day-to-day operations, and I had 2 part-time employees, and I spent just all my time in the bakery, and I didn't really have much of a chance to get out and network and go to these business events, and that was something that I wanted to have more time to do. I didn't have my weekends because I was always doing markets and shows, and I just didn't feel like for the life that I wanted, it just wasn't fulfilling that need. And now with what I'm doing, I'm able to have a greater work-life balance, and really focus in on all the areas that I enjoy. So to jump ahead now, I'm now currently with Simply Social, which is a startup company. Tyler Arnold and his 2 co-founders started the company a year ago, and Tyler's 20 years old and went to South Anchorage High School, I believe. And there's about 18 employees in the company, and the average age is, I think, 24 of our company, which is it's great to work with and around other young people who just inspire me on a daily basis and push me and are just so knowledgeable. But we all grow together, and I love being I'm still a part of a startup process, but it's not just, everything's not on my shoulders like it was before, and I have a team to work with. And being part of that is very inspiring and just a joy. I'm just trying to think of what else. So now with my job, I work with our clients. I do a lot of mentorship on what they need to do to improve their marketing when it comes to social media, And then I'm also the communications between them and our programmers, and that's a great, fun job. And at the same time, I have my weekends back. I enjoy volunteering. I'm a volunteer firefighter, involved in Rotary, and sit on the bank at Credit Union 1 on their advisory board. And I finally have time to do all of that without feeling like I'm drowning at times, because before I couldn't balance it all out, and now I have that ability. So yeah, and I've had a great journey to get to where I am now, and I still can't tell you where I'll be another 5-10 years down the road. I hope it'll be with Simply Social. It's a company that I really enjoy being a part of. Tyler just went to startup school at, I believe it was hosted at Stanford University, and one of the guest speakers was Mark Zuckerberg, and him coming back from that, he was able to share his stories with me about the startup school, and again working with somebody who again is constantly looking for opportunities and asking me where I see opportunities and how we can formulate a strategy to go after new markets, and it's great. So that's
we have about 20 minutes for Q&A now, so I'll just run the mic around to whoever has a question to ask.
I had a couple questions. The first, I think you answered in your comments, and that was about networking and finding the right people, both for information and help. But my second question is, how did you find the difference between the knowledge in college to the application of that knowledge in the real world? Was that simple, easy, a barrier, not unrelated? What was your experience with that?
Any of us?
Yeah.
Okay, I can speak to that a little bit. A lot of knowledge from my business degree and my master's degree I found instantly applicable, and like Chelsey was saying, some of it I was in school while starting a business, which actually makes it pretty, you're pretty aware of how what you're learning applies to business because you're right in it at that moment. So you literally leave school that day and go, I wish I had known that a week ago. Okay, I'm going to go home and run these numbers. But if you finish your education before you decide to become an entrepreneur or before you have become an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't even notice that you're using the knowledge. So like me and my manager, we'll get into discussions about where the business is going, and other employees in the room will be like, you lost me at margin. I don't know what you're talking about. And then we'll realize that we were using our educations that some of our other employees don't have. So a lot of times you're using that knowledge and you didn't realize that you learned it in school. So you're absorbing stuff that you're going to use later. You just don't know it yet. But yeah, I don't know how to keep it at the forefront of your mind. Like, okay, I'm going to need this. I'm going to need this later, so pay attention. But speaking to your other comment about using your resources, that has been big, like using your resources. I still, to this day, go to professors at this school with questions about things that I know they know about. I also am an active user of the Small Business Development Center. They hold courses that I attend on a regular basis. Like anything that comes up about taxes, I go to it, even if it doesn't really sound like it applies to me. Anything about insurance, I attend that seminar. So I get their schedule by email, and I use those resources. And there's a lot of free resources at the Small Business Development Center. And you can go in there anytime. And they have business plan writing help, and anything you can think of, it's there, and mostly free. So I also have a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. I call my dad and or my brother almost daily with questions, and because they both have decades of experience that started way before I was born. So using your resources is really important. I call other people in my industry, and I like to think that I've helped teach them that it's okay to ask each other these questions, you know? Like I call other people that have been in tourism longer than me and say, like, you know, what is your policy when a guest is doing this? Or what is your policy if this happens during one of your tours? You know, etc. Call your insurance agent and on a daily basis if you need to, and ask them what you should be doing, because they'll have opinions on your entire business, because whether you think so or not, everything you do is affecting an outcome that relates to your insurance someday. So everything that you do could affect your insurance, or your insurance could affect you. So your insurance agent is another great resource. Like, should I be doing this? Like, or how should I be doing this? And they'll tell you. Like, they are not afraid to tell me, like, do not hire anyone else under the age of 25 to drive these vehicles. Like, just don't do it, you know? They're not afraid to tell me that, and I'm not afraid to ask. So use your resources. That was my short answer. If you want the long one, I have a card.
Could I follow up to that question? The answer, Candice, you started talking about the whole support system. So the college is a support system, SBDC, and you talked about family, community. Could the rest of the panelists also talk about their support systems, but also think about what gap is there in the support system for entrepreneurs in Alaska, in Anchorage and in Alaska? So think about gaps also.
Sure, I'd kind of hit at that. Let's hit something burning. I'm going to contrast her story. I don't have a college degree. So I experienced the lack of not having the directed knowledge. My viewpoint has, well, not my viewpoint, but my approach has been somebody's done this before. It's not rocket science.
So the network.
So I wind up spending probably more time and effort to chase after an answer that was simply provided in a college course. And if I had gone through college, then I probably would have the toolbox full of the tools to use. But I chose the route instead to only go after the tools when I need the tools. That being said, when I get into certain situations, in accounting especially, in dealing with regulatory matters, business law, those are areas that I've always recognized require a deep knowledge, they require a deep skill set, they require a broad sense of a horizon, and I've chosen not to spend the time in college chasing that. Instead, picking the phone up and calling. Google is my best friend. And actually what I have done is taken the Harvard Business Review, and I take the case studies every month, and I sit down, and what I started doing a number of years ago was literally going through the case study, coming up with my own answer, and then reading the answers. And what I found over time is I was light years away from the experts' answers, and over time I've come closer and closer and closer. Well, if I had taken some college courses, I probably would have been a lot closer to the correct answers and the applicable answers a lot sooner. So it's a different route, but it's definitely probably more work. And now that I've started coming back and taking classes, I'm experiencing what Candice described. Oh my gosh, if I had this tool a year and a half ago, I wouldn't have had to spend 3 days on an Excel spreadsheet. So I definitely kick myself for not having stopped, paused my life, gotten a degree, and chased after it. So that's kind of a different version of it, but I'm definitely coming back and chasing my degree now that my business can afford myself the time and the tuition monies. As far as the networks go, I have a much shorter answer on that. My philosophy has been to be around the people that I want to be like. And Eric is one of those people that he's got a solid business, he has a solid, steady income, he's got a broad view on the horizon. So I try to find the pots of people that are doing what I want to do or are in situations of life I want to be in. And then when I get there, I shut up and try to listen as much as I can. like Meg does. It's a great skill, and when I found people that are willing to share their experience, I really try to treasure that connection and really respect it, and it's allowed me to be able to pick the phone up and call or email and ask the questions. Because Matt, I'll tell you what, when a CPA has experience in a dynamic, they're going to provide an answer there's no way I'd be able to ever figure out on my own, no matter what. So I attend a lot of the like Chamber of Commerce luncheons. Rotary is a good way to do it. SBDC has been a really good program that I've taken advantage of. And a couple other associations to belong to that get me in the flow of those kind of people. So I'm on the board of the Salvation Army for the state, and that's got me in connection with other business owners and people with a broad picture. I ran for State House a number of years ago, and so the relationships and the connections that were made from that I still have, and I still call and ask questions. So
pretty soon the mentors become the mentees. You learn more from them than than they do from you. That's all.
Well, I have a quick comment about a gap that I've noticed, and that is in your particular field where you want to start your business. I have found that there doesn't seem to be a source. I'm speaking about regulatory matters. There doesn't seem to be a source that says, if you're going to start this kind of business, you need this kind of insurance, you need this permit, you need this. And maybe for some like bigger fields, maybe there are sources for that. Like if you're going to start an oil field company, there's probably an organization that can tell you all those regulations. Even the Department of Labor, like nobody was able to tell me that I needed a municipality of Anchorage permit on every van. I had no idea. So I was operating illegally in the beginning. No one, including the DMV themselves, is able to tell you what size vehicles this stuff applies to. So even my family comes from freight, so they didn't know, like passenger, that if you have 16 or more seats, you need a CDL. If you have 15 or less seats, you need a municipality of Anchorage permit, which comes with another license that's not a CDL. They don't cancel each other out. You have to have both if you have both sizes of vehicles. But there was nowhere that is listed. And so drivers have gone into the DMV, or people that wanted to start a van tour company have gone in the DMV and said, what license do I need? And the DMV's like, what kind of van is it? Oh, it's a 15 passenger. Oh, you're fine. You don't need any special license. So they don't know about the muni permits and licenses. So there didn't seem to be a source for that. I've also asked the Small Business Development Center advisors what special things you need to be a travel agent, and they don't know. No one knows. So it's like you just have to keep going until you run into a problem, and then you learn it. So I love to mentor people in my industry, because I'm like, now that I know, I'm like, here, I'm going to make you a list. Here's the things that you need to do before you get on the road. So I don't know why there's not a source, but that's a gap that I've noticed. I'm sure in other industries as well.
You may have answered my question before I ask it, but I really have two questions. From your perspective as entrepreneurs in Alaska, what is the single greatest opportunity that you see in and about Alaska for entrepreneurship generally? And then a second question is, either what is the biggest problem that you see, which you may have just described, or what was the most costly mistake that you made in your move toward entrepreneurship that you would mind sharing? Obviously, if it's too sensitive, you don't have to. But basically, opportunities and threats, I guess, is what I'm asking for.
Pricing products was the most costly mistake for me. That's missing from the business degree, or I just missed it somewhere. But pricing what you're selling, like knowing what goes into that, and when you open a business, and you need to sell stuff right away, especially if you have no capital, like I had none. So I'm like, I need to sell stuff right away in order to keep running. But, you know, I'm like, okay, so I've got gas, I need to cover my fuel, and I need to cover the entrance fees to the Wildlife Conservation Center, and I'm good. So I did not consider my rent for my office, the insurance, the vehicle payments. So like getting all of your costs down and then adding margin, which is another thing that people don't think about. And I see new businesses do it all the time. Like I've even had new van tour company owners argue it out with me, like, you're charging too much, blah, blah, blah. You can do this, 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 and here's your price. And I'm like, yeah, you forgot to pay yourself. Or your driver if you have one, you know. So to me, the most costly mistake I've ever made was underpricing my products.
I'd say the biggest opportunity, though, is just being first to market with Alaska.
Yes.
You can see what trends are popular in other places and be the first to launch it here, or you come up with your own unique idea, and there's usually an opportunity for almost any business to get in at the ground floor level and not have a lot of competition or very little competition. So I would say that's the largest opportunity that I've seen.
It's a very easy place to start a business, all in all.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I often say, if I was back in I lived in Richmond, Virginia, and I did hair there in a really big salon, and I often say if I was there doing what I'm doing here, I would just be another salon on another street, and it wouldn't be,
in the millions.
Yeah. So definitely I love the lack of
competition.
Competition, and also the lack of, I mean, I feel like Alaskans aren't
offer a higher
super
service.
consumers, and they're not, it's not like there's definitely not a huge overconsumption problem in Alaska. I think people appreciate simple things, and they appreciate what is in front of them instead of wanting more and always wanting.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I have a question. When you did your plans, you thought about your business, got started with what we call board of advisors, people who have experience in the marketplace, for instance, could tell you about pricing Candice. Somebody that's done it before, that's retired, or they're there and they can help you, or an accountant that's a friend. There's some investors here that I can tell you will not even look at a business plan unless it includes in the management section a board of advisors, because it gives them the feeling that you've reached out and you are looking for the help that you can't get from a DMV, which I totally agree. I'd rather talk to somebody who's in the industry to say, hey, I did that 5 years ago, and here's the answer.
Yeah.
Does any of you looking at a board of advisors have a informal or formal board of advisors?
I would say I always had an informal board of advisor. I had certain mentors that I'd go to for specific advice, and I mean that's the only reason why I was able to grow and learn, was to surround myself with people who had the skills that I, either had not yet acquired, or just their knowledge is just far beyond mine, and I was able to at least get a tiny bit of that from them. So you can't, I mean, as much as I did learn, of course, going to school and attending college, I mean, my greatest takeaway was having mentors. Many of my professors became my mentors, and then I just, in addition to that, throughout the business community, being involved in the Chamber and Rotary and Women Entrepreneurs of Alaska is a group that I belong to, and I go periodically to surround myself with other like-minded entrepreneurial women and, share ideas, and that was the part that helped me grow the most, both just personally and professionally.
I've definitely had a board of advisors. I've never listed them in a business plan, though, and I've also found that even though I now have a business plan, which I didn't in the beginning, no one wants to look at it. So I've gone into banks. So, I set up a meeting with one banker, and I said, you know what? I'm not coming, actually, unless you tell me that you'll look at my business plan. Otherwise, I'm just not going to come. I'm not going to waste my time. And so she was like, oh, yes, of course, I'll look at it. Bring everything. So I brought everything, and she didn't. Like, she didn't look at it. Like, she basically said, we're going to have to wait until you have a little more cash flow. And I was like, if I had the cash, I wouldn't need the loan. I mean, you know, like, so, like, but that is what I, you know, it's kind of like this, okay, little girl, like, you just need to.
They say, okay, little boy, too.
Yeah, it turns out you just need to get a little farther in your business before we'll consider looking at you. And I'm like, you know, and I just told her, I said, you know what? I said I didn't want to come unless you were going to look at my business plan, and you didn't look at my business plan. So really feel like you wasted my time here. And when I switched banks, I didn't switch to that one. So I've had a little bit of trouble getting people to look at what I believe my future is. Luckily for me, it's gone exactly how I knew it would, and I no longer need bankers. So
to answer your question, I found that no. To answer directly, no, I've not put board of advisors on there. But the realistic answer is they're informal. Absolutely, I'm always asking questions because
it's
the
so
whole
yeah.
situation of the startup is I don't know, I have an idea to get there. And so anytime I run across any of the bankers, the lawyers, the attorneys, the investor, it's very quick. Here's what I do know, here's what I'm projecting, but here's what I don't know. And what I'm finding consistently is that they're willing to provide information to lean forward. I know Alaska's really different than the lower 48. We're so much more informal up here. The connections are so much closer. I'm planning on going down and pitching in the lower 48 over this next year. I know I'm going to have more formal board of advisors on there, more formal curriculum vitae, things like that, just because that's the expectation in the lower 48. But I think there's a gap in Alaska, not just in resources, but in intelligence. You know, you said your question was about the biggest gap. Your question was about the biggest opportunities. Alaska, I think, lacks the maturity in investors to know how to evaluate risk outside their industry. They've made money historically in Alaska because they hit one industry and did great at it. But to be able to evaluate risk beyond that for the big picture of things, there's 3 people that I know of that know how to do it outside of that, but I've talked to well over 20. So if we can get the investors to be able to be more competent in that, but also I think if we send startup-minded entrepreneurs to go pitch in the lower 48, I think it's going to raise all of our games to the point that Alaska is going to be doing global startups by using our logistics supply chain. I mean, we've got 5 runways over a mile long that can hit freight over 90% of the world within 8 hours. We don't use them. Only Stevens Airport is. We have an internet that can provide a lifestyle to programmers that's second to none anywhere in the world. But why aren't we punching the global programming out of Alaska? We're just not taking advantage of it. And I think it's because we're not on the radar of the big investors in the lower 48, and our local investors haven't been able to hit enough big hits in the technology sectors and logistics centers to take advantage of that, to put Alaska in the center of startups. So that's my short answer. Do you have any thoughts?
I definitely have a very informal board of advisors, but it's basically just my other small business owner friends that I have, and just kind of, you know, I mentioned that I'm a busybody. Just getting information from other people is definitely one of my talents, and so no, I don't have a formal board, but I try to get what I can from where I can, and also know that I need to do a better job of doing that more. So
great. Well, that's about all the time we have left today. Could we get a final round of applause for our great panel?